Very good evening to all of you. I hope you're all doing good. Great. How's the Josh? High, very high. It should be very high. Okay. So today I will be taking up your previous year analysis of modern Indian history section, right? How do you feel about this subject? How many of you have given this year's paper? Okay. Last year's paper? No? Okay. So what are your feelings about this subject? Is it doable? Or has the difficulty level increased? Have you all seen previous year papers? Yes? So what do you think about this subject? If you compare it with culture, obviously it is easy, right? Right? Sources are predictable. Yes? So where is the catch? What do you think now UPSC is doing? First, they are changing the format. Second, in almost every subject, it's not restricted to only history. Almost in every subject, they are covering and asking those areas which are, usually not touched by you, forgotten topics. So, that is how UPSC is making papers difficult. So you have to understand the relevance of this examination first, right? What is the importance of this examination in your life? You have to make it, right? So don't have any selective approach with respect to any subject. However, there is a disclaimer. When I'm saying selective approach, I'm not talking about that you have to do everything under the sun. But yes, there are certain smart ways in which you can cover and prepare UPSC. You've all attended toppers talk. They all say that previous year papers karne are not only restricted to 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. They also go to 15, 20 years, right? And that is why we are conducting these sessions to let you know that UPSC is reachable. UPSC is doable. There are sources from your standard textbooks or texts which you have to cover, and that's how you prepare for this exam, right? History. So I feel that if you love this subject, love kaise karoge? Love aise karoge that you are also part of history. You will also become part of history, right? So to know anything, you have to know history. Okay? So don't have any aversions from this subject. It is very much within your reach, and it's interesting to know how our colonial past has impacted not only historical times, but even till today we have a legacy which we are carrying forward, right? So have a very open-minded approach towards any subject, and that's how you prepare it, right? Secondly, so yes, we will be doing the trend analysis of 5 years, last 5 years, but I must tell you that even if we are doing for 5 years, there are topics which have been asked beyond 5 years which have parallels to draw with, within the 5 years. Just to give you an example. So Swadeshi movement. Swadeshi movement has been covered in the last 5 years and has been also asked by UPSC 10 years back, 7 years back. So you have repetition of topics. It's not as if, every year there are only new topics which are asked by UPSC. So you have to have a continuity. You have to prepare previous year papers. I hope everyone has, seen previous year papers also preparing for your college exams. Yes? Why do you do that? Because it is an indication of what topic is important, in which direction you have to prepare for the exam. And that's how you will understand about UPSC also, through previous year papers. Okay? So the trend analysis which I will be doing in today's session will be not only restricted to only give you the number of questions, but number of questions in particular section. Within that section, I will also be covering sources. So for every question asked in the last 5 years, I will be giving you the source for every question, right? And on that basis, we will come to a conclusion that yes, majority of modern Indian history questions, when I'm saying majority, I mean more than 60% of the questions do come from your static sources, right? So that will be a revelation for you also, because that's needed. That's how you get motivated ki haan, mujhe pata hai NCERTs are important, so I'll do it, right? If you know that, okay, spectrum is important, you'll do that, right? So that's also important for any aspirant to know that from where questions are coming, right? So this is the last 5-year number of questions asked in modern Indian history, 29, close to around 6 questions every year in the last 5 years. Now, the number has actually decreased in the last 5 years. Whose weightage has increased? Art and culture, ancient, medieval, right? So on an average, in the history section, which also includes ancient, medieval, and culture, there are roughly about 15 to 16 questions every year. But the weightage of modern Indian history has decreased. Will this be a new normal? No one knows. Will this be a pattern? No one knows. You never know, na? That, okay, in the last 2-3 years, if the number of questions have been decreasing, it does not depend on how the questions have been or the pattern has been. UPSC any year, next year probably, can increase the weightage. So you have to understand that, you know, every year there is a change. You don't have to bother too much about change. You have to only focus on the process. And the process is that modern Indian history is important, not only in prelims, but also in mains, right? So it has a, you know, high weightage in mains as well. So prepare this topic accordingly, okay? So maximum questions have come from Indian national movement and freedom struggle, right? In your prelims, what does the syllabus say? The syllabus says history of India and Indian national movement. Okay? So maximum questions have come in the last 5 years from this section only, right? Second important section is your British Acts and Policies. To understand what is British Acts and Policies, all the acts and initiatives taken by the British government during the 19th and 20th century, right? It includes your Regulating Act of 1773, Charter Act, Government of India Act, right? It also includes the constitutional development. You know, whenever the wars happened, First World War, Second World War, there were certain perks given by, you know, the British government. Like, for example, during Second World War, August Offer came, Cripps Mission came, right? So questions did come from, or do come from, this section. Advent of Europeans. This is one area which was untouched, right? You did not focus too much on this section, so this weightage, the section of, you know, the weightage of this section has increased. Similarly, economic impact of Britishers, which is a topic in your mains. Usually, you know, questions come from the issues in that period of economic impact of British rule. So in prelims also, UPSC has started asking, you know, questions from this section. So there are again linkages which you can do, that, you know, issues or topics which are coming in mains, they are also increasingly being asked by UPSC in prelims. Okay? So history, maybe you can draw parallels like that, right? Next section is socio-religious movement. Socio-religious movement again is an important part of your mains preparation. In prelims also you do get questions, right? Governor General, peasant and tribal rebellions, miscellaneous, they have only one question in the last 5 years, right? But otherwise, peasant and tribal rebellion is an important topic in prelims, right? So this is how the number of questions thematically have been asked by UPSC. Okay? Now coming to the overall difficulty of the paper, as well as, you know, how now you have to focus. So out of 29 questions, it's you know, the difficulty level on the basis of which I have, you know, classified is based on whether you can answer a particular question from your static source or not, right? So if it is answerable, the whole question is answerable from the static source, then that means it's easy to medium category, right? If a question cannot be answered from a static source only, it requires other high-end, or, you know, other books, other sources to substantiate. That will be from medium to difficulty level, and difficulty means ki matlab you have to, either ignore that source or include that source. Okay? So overall, if you see number of questions in the last 5 years, there have been 6 questions. That means एक question तो बनता है ना difficult every year, है ना? Rest are in the category of medium to easy level of difficulty. So even if UPSC is asking one question every year, which is difficult, you can't run behind those sources from which the question has been asked, right? So you have to make a very sound judgment that, okay, if I'm doing a topic, I have covered it from prelims and mains point of view, both. You have to have an integrated approach for this whole preparation, right? Applaud. Applause is needed for UPSC because out of 29 questions, 22 have been from your static sources, which you all read, which is, which is making or which makes this subject very doable. So you have to have, again, this idea about prelims paper. Areas which are reachable, right? Areas which can be targeted. On a very serious note now I'm saying, the areas which are, can be done from your static sources are the ones which will give you 100% 2 marks. You cannot leave this section. Rather, you have to prepare this section very nicely, right? So this is one thing which I wanted to tell you, that there are many subjects. Let's go for economics, S&T, environment. The sources have gone beyond your reach, right? You can't prepare everything. But in certain subjects like polity, history, even to an extent geography, you can do such subjects from your static sources, right? Now what are those static sources which I'm talking? Static sources, spectrum, your old NCERT class 12th, your 8th standard NCERT R past part 3. This is important book. Reason being, I have seen many questions coming from 6th, 7th, 8th class NCERT, whether it's ancient medieval culture or modern Indian history. This will only take 2 hours, maximum 3 hours to read. Things which are not there either in your spectrum or this 12th standard old NCERT, you just add in the book which you are going to revise your content or subject from in the last minute, right? So this is also a static book which you have to cover. Secondly, now this is optional. This is optional. Optional means they are also static books, right? You can't discard this book if you are doing your preparation for mains. Hana? Similarly, there are topics which you don't get here in mains, but you use this book for mains, right? There is a topic in your mains, contributions of different personalities from India in freedom struggle. So you have a chapter, Many Voices of a Nation. So this book, again, if you are reading for selective chapters, you can very well just substantiate your prelims content also from this book. But as I said, both these books are optional for prelims. Your main source will be these books for prelims, right? Apart from your test series or your class notes, whatever you are studying extra. Okay? Then comes your newspaper and current affairs, which I'll show you through questions how UPSC is asking modern Indian history questions through newspapers and other sources. Okay? So let's start. Has everyone settled down? Yes? Okay. So our first section will be Advent of Europeans. So our history starts from there. Hara? Europeans came to India. They came as a traders, and then eventually they colonized India, and India went into this colonization process with the East India Company, right? So basic information about how our history started is very much essential to remember facts. Often asked question from the from your end is, ma'am, there are so many facts, how do we cover and how do we, remember? See, you have to have that kind of, story in your mind, that how it all began, what is the role of INM, what is the role of INA. If the story is made, remembering of facts become easier. Now, these facts, don't underrate the importance of facts that, it's only needed in your prelims. The facts which you read for prelims becomes examples in your mains answer, right? Am I wrong or right? Right. So you have to remember facts, okay? So don't, make your mind, function as if, that, analysis is required only for mains. You don't require analysis or dynamicity in preparation for prelims. It's all myth. Everything is integrated. Okay. So we start with advent of Europeans. This is the first question which I'm taking up. It came in 2019. Source of this question, again NCERT. But which NCERT? World History ki NCERT. Why I started my discussion with drawing parallels with mains? Because this is how you are going to prepare for UPSC. If you want to target UPSC in its entirety, you first start your preparation with what? Mains, na? You don't start your preparation with prelims. Prelims to baad mein aata hai, right? So when you start your preparation for UPSC, understand and develop that story there and then, right? So that's how the importance of certain topics or areas or questions might click at the examination hall, because UPSC to ye kar raha hai. Okay. It may look like that it is modern Indian history question. Yes, it is modern Indian history question. But content kahan se milega aapko? UPSC is framing question from NCERT world history. Okay. So the question is, which one of the following groups of plants was domesticated in the New World and introduced in the Old World? Pehli baat hai, New World, Old World was very new when this question came to many aspirants. What is this? Then they sat and figured it out. Acha, it could be that Old World could be, Asia, China, right? New World could be America, Europe, something of that sort. Okay. So question may, agar if you still want to apply logic, if something is clicking in your mind, however, we don't know how the pattern of questions will be, because this year such type of logics have been eliminated, but still in ABCD format you still have a scope, right? So what could be Old World? Old World is your Asia, right? So question is, which of the plants was domesticated in the New World and introduced in the Old World? अब अगर किसी को लॉजिक लगाना है, everyone knows that cotton is produced in India, so B can be eliminated, C can be eliminated, wheat is also a staple crop of Indian subcontinent, D can also be eliminated. So there can be applied a logic which, to attempt this question. But what about the theoretical aspect? So it all started with Christopher Columbus. You all know who is he? He was an explorer, right? He wanted to explore Asia, China for what? For silk, spices. So in 14th, 15th century, the Europeans were striving to explore the world, to look into the avenues for trade products, right? Christopher Columbus, explored the Asian subcontinent. He thought that he's exploring Asian subcontinent, but he reached Americas, not America, Americas, right? Caribbean, Bahamas pe he first landed, right? So in that process of Columbian exchange, there was an attempt done to colonize the world, right? So this was the starting point to understand the colonialism, right? This Columbian exchange of crops or diseases, so there were diseases also which was coming from the old world to the new world, Hana? And crops were also getting exchanged, right? So there was a imbalance, right? So that's how you first make a very simplistic understanding of how things have had taken place. ठीक है? So the answer is A. So this is your themes in world history. New world, वहीं से question बना है, देखो products, tobacco, potato, cane sugar, cocoa, cacao and rubber, है ना? Question में यही options थे. So this is for sure that static source, NCERT, is picked up for this particular question. ठीक है? So this is how the exchange was happening in terms of crops. So the new world crops were beans, pepper, potatoes, rubber, tobacco, sweet potatoes, cashews, avocados जो अभी rage में है, you know, it has become very fashionable to have avocado toast. So avocado is also very new, है ना? Pineapples, strawberries. Old world crops क्या थे? Carrot, almond, apples, banana, coffee, garlic, oats. So this is how the exchange happened, right? Then second thing which you need to understand is, you know, so when you get to know that, okay, this topic has been explored, right, by UPSC, go, you know, little deep into it. Now how much deep? How much deep? There is no end to deepness, right? So this how much deep and how many facts, you know, pertains to an understanding that in the last, you know, 15, 20 years, what all questions have been asked, right? When I'm saying na 20 years, I mean it. How many of you have seen Topper's talk or attended Topper's talk? How many toppers say that the key to clearing prelims is that they have understood that themes do get repeated. They understand how they are going to prepare through previous year papers, right? So that's the key. So from the topics which have already been asked by UPSC, you know, you have to understand and link a story. It's not as if new world, old world would be new in, you know, in the examination hall only. So there have been questions asked by UPSC on Christopher Columbus, right? So if you would have studied that, if you would have studied in your world history first few chapters, you would have, you know, attempted this question. So that's how you make sense of how you are going to proceed for UPSC prelims. Second question, it came in 2019. Again, the source of this question is static. Old NCERT plus spectrum में आपको ये question की information will be available, right? First statement. But this question is analytical. It is not easy. Analytical how? So where and how UPSC sets traps. That makes the question little bit analytical, which demands more than one information, right? So the statement says the Dutch established their factories, warehouses on the east coast on lands granted to them by Gajpati rulers. यहाँ तक तो ठीक है, on the east coast, because everyone knows that, you know, Masulipattnam pe there was a factory, right? है ना? So that's there in NCERT. How many of you know the year? 1605. ठीक है? Now this is also very important because UPSC plays with time period and timeline. Otherwise also when you're doing history, timeline is important. ठीक है? So if someone knows that, okay, Masulipattnam pe there was a factory and it was set up in 1605, right? यहाँ तक तो ठीक था, but how UPSC has extended this basic information to more analytical one, to the lands granted to them by Gajpati rulers. अब यहाँ पर है trap. Whether you know that who granted lands to the Dutch to set up a factory, right? That means now this is an indication, and that's how you prepare when you see the previous year papers, that till 10 years or 10 years back, इतना चल सकता था that you know कि मसूलीपट्टनम पे factory थी. But who gave it, who leased it, right, is also important, ना? Again, ठीक है? So if someone knows the timeline of Gajpati rulers, they can eliminate this statement. अब जैसे मैंने बोला, elimination is not there, but see how UPSC had framed the question in 2019 back then. So they were only checking whether you know the timeline of Gajpati rulers, whether you know in which year Masulipattnam pay factory was set up, and if you know this, you can reach to the answer by eliminating one. Okay? That means when you are preparing now this section, timeline, who gave it? Itna to sabko pata hai, Sir Thomas Raw got the farman from Jahangir. है ना? So when you remember that, you know, that aspect is remembered, this is also important. है ना? So that's how you make sense of things. Second, Alfonso de Albuquerque captured Goa from the Bijapur Sultanate. This is correct, and it's given in your NCRT also. Third, the English East India Company established a factory at Madras on a plot of land leased from a representative of the Vijayanagar Empire. Again, so this question, or you know, UPSC questions do also give you an information. Okay, so when you know English came and they tried to set up factory at Madras, Vijayanagar rulers gave them the permission, right? So that's how you add wherever you are making notes, or add this information from, you know, UPSC questions in a book, right? And again, go one step ahead. Okay? So the answer is 2 and 3. So this is how, you know, from your NCRT, you get information कि Dutch ने मसूलीपट्टनम पे बनाया था in 1605. Right? Then British in Madras in 1639. Right? So who all were rulers or the dynasty at that point of time? And that's what the question is. Okay? Now this question, as I said, was difficult. Reason being, although a part of information or a piece of information you do get in your NCRT, but another part is what requires your interlinkage, right? And that's what is again important. Okay? So Gajpati rulers ruled till 1541 only. So agar itna bhi pata hai that they did not cross till 17th century, 16th century tak hi they ruled, that to middle of the 16th century, your task would have been over in this particular question. Okay? So this is the extra information which you can download from the slides. Ki Dutch ko charter mila tha in 1602 to form a company and then trade. And they set up factories at Masulipattnam, Pulikat, Chinsura, Karikal. They are very important because another question which has come in the last 5 years is also asking a question on factories. Okay? So this aspect is important. I would like to also give you a framework for every topic so that, you know, it makes sense as to how you are going to approach this topic when you have attended this session. So when you're doing advent of Europeans, I'm telling you on the basis of last 20 years how questions have come. You can note down this framework and prepare this topic accordingly, right? So one is explorers who came to India, from which country, trade products or commodities. Third aspect is, you know, Europeans and their establishments in India. Establishments आप समझते हो? Factories, ports, right? Places, kings or dynasty. Right? Then comes the battles. Now you don't have to remember all the battles, with which our local regional rulers versus English, French, Dutch, etc. were involved. But those battles which either led to the European influence in that particular region or led to the end of their rule or their, imperial establishment. Just to give an example, which battle led to the downfall of Dutch in India, right? Or which Battle of Bedera. So that's how you are going to make sense, right? Which battle led to the coming up of or starting the influence of Britishers in India, right? Or English East India Company. So Battle of Plassey, Battle of Buxar are instrumental because they paved the way for the revenue control, right? So that's how you are going to make sense within this topic. Okay? So all that information which was there in the question was there in your NCERT also. Only the linkages which I discussed with you was not there. जैसे नहीं पता है कि Gajpati rulers का timeline or let's say Vijayanagar Empire. So that's how you are going to make sense. ठीक है? So Vijayanagar Empire ruled till around 1646. In some sources you will also get 1650. So approximate idea will also do. ठीक है? Then comes your 2021 question again on the similar line, ki which factories were located or were established by English, right? At which all centers. So that means you should know that major establishments or forts or factories were established by which European power at which coast. ठीक है, तो डच का पता होना चाहिए, पोर्चुगीज, फ्रेंच, इंग्लिश, and that's how UPSC is also asking questions. So this question is a factual one, but again dynamic and interesting one, just to confuse you, because again these names you have heard about in your NCERTs, you have read them, right? But UPSC ने बहुत they have played with you. How? Question में, so the only place where English East India Company, set up their factories out of the places which UPSC had given, it was only Broch. Broch is Bharuch, Gujarat. ठीक है? Chikakol, Trichinpalli, there were no English East India Company factories. So there are questions like these, which will test the factual knowledge as well. So again, how prelims questions are to be seen, that means factual knowledge is also being asked. The interlinkages is also being asked. Newspapers or current affairs are also being asked, right? So you have to club all these skills in you, hone them, brush them. चाहे आप टाइड से करो या सर्व से करो, but you have to shine your skills, right? तो ये आपको करना ही पड़ेगा. You have to prepare certain facts which UPSC is asking. And again, these type of questions have been asked since time immemorial. ठीक है? So the answer is one only. In your NCERT, there is a map. इसको रट लो. रट लो मतलब you have to rote learn it, right? Just before the examination. So these are those type of information which you can't remember by heart, right? So you have to, revise these topics just before the examination of prelims. Okay? So you have to identify while preparing for UPSC which topics I will revise just before the exam, which are totally factual, right? And which I am going to make base or foundation upon, right? So this is that type of information which you can either remember through solving test series questions, or you can revise them just before your prelims examination. Okay? But this map is important, right? This is there in your Modern India old NCERT. Broch, factories of East India English Company. ठीक है? Then comes your question on economic impact of colonial rule. So 3 questions have been asked. Let me give you a framework for this particular topic and then I'll proceed. So how you are going to do this topic specifically for prelims and what kind of questions come. So when you're doing economic impact of British rule, there are 3 phases in which this happened, right? One was the phase of merchant capitalism. ये कौन सा time period हो गया? What do you understand by merchant capitalism? When they came as traders. So Europeans came as traders. So around 15 to 17th century. ठीक है? इस time period पे क्या हो रहा था? Trade, establishments of forts, factories, right? Then economic drain, right? Corruption हो रहा था, private trade हो रहा था, right? Drain of wealth हो रहा था. Then comes your phase of industrial capitalism. इस टाइम पे क्या हो रहा था? Around 18 to 19th century. Ruralization, de-urbanization, ruining of handicrafts, forced plantation, right? So when you make sense of different phases, you relate with the events which happened during that phase. Okay? That's how story gets built up. Then what happened? Phase of finance capitalism. This is construction or establishment of infrastructure. ठीक है? जैसे railways, banks, ports. Again, this was happening basically through finance. And the English companies were coming over here to invest and they used to get a guaranteed return. ये होता था in railways, guarantee system. Sorry? Labor supply, huh? So that's how economic impact of Britishers could be understood in different phases. Prelims में क्या करना है? You add events in every phase. Right? Let's see the questions. 19th to 20th century. Then comes your question, indigo cultivation. So it came in 2020. Indigo cultivation in India declined by the beginning of the 20th century because. So the question is not asking you the reason for the indigo cultivation. Question is, why did indigo cultivation decline in the 20th century? Source kya hai? You can very well answer this question by basically understanding indigo revolt and either these phases of economic exploitation. Okay? So how can you eliminate certain options? So it declined because peasant resistance to the oppressive conduct of planters was the reason? No. Right? National leaders' opposition to the cultivation of indigo? No. D, government control over the planters? No. Decline matlab that even the Britishers, stopped having interest, है ना? So the reason was that indigo को replace किसने करा था? Synthetic or artificial dyes, and that was the reason again, which declined the interest of the Britishers to grow indigo any further. Okay? So its unprofitability in the world market because of the new inventions led to the decline in the indigo cultivation. Sources, exactly, static sources में आपका ये answer है. This is which book again? Your 8th NCERT. With the discovery of synthetic dyes in the late 19th century, their business was severely affected, but yet they managed to expand production. This was the reason why there was a shift from indigo cultivation to other crops. Similarly, you get the same understanding from this book. You again get the same understanding from your Bipin Chandra, India's Struggle Since Independence. Haan. This one? No, this is the new one, say 8th standard. Okay. So, what was the indigo revolt? So whenever you are doing peasant and tribal rebellions, I'll give you the framework, but understand that when you are doing any revolt or any cultivation or forced thing, there are certain terms which are used. Those terms are to be done. Just for example, in indigo cultivation, there is a term used which is Teen Kathiya system, right? Who are the leaders who were popular, during this revolt, right? What were the strategies or methods, used by the revolters against the Britishers or the Zamindars? So there is a framework which I'll be sharing with you when I'll be discussing the peasant and tribal rebellions. But understand that there has to be a comprehensive understanding. Once that's done, your questions are very easy. Okay? It's not as if they're asking very difficult questions. Then comes your 2020 prelims question, term-based questions. So you do get term-based questions from your modern Indian history section. It is a misconception or probably half information which many aspirants have, that only from ancient, medieval and culture terms are being asked. It's not the case. There are term-related questions in your modern Indian history section as well, right? Again, the source is static. It's not as if this question could not be answered, right? So why few people, repeatedly clear prelims? Because they have actually done their basic and static sources. Okay? Orang is not a term used for in charge of treasury of the state, but it is a kind of a warehouse. Ye information aapko kahan milti hai? Again in this book. That's why I'm focusing on this book. There are many questions from this book only. Orang is a term for warehouse. Right? So, one is that. Second, the term used was Mirasidar, +C2 partition. Okay? Banyas, again this book. Right? No, this is this book. Shekhar Bandyopadhyay's +C2 partition, which I have categorized in the static source. Right? So, the answer is 2 and 3. Orang is a term used for a warehouse, not for a treasury of the state. So 1 is eliminated, right? 2 is correct. Banya community was agents of the East India Company back then. Mirasidars were revenue payers to the state. Okay? Then comes another question on the economic impact of British rule. Question is, which of the following statements, now this is very important that we understand the question first, right? Which of the following statements correctly explains the impact of the Industrial Revolution on India during the first half of the 19th century? That means this question is asking you, out of the given options, which is actually explicitly defining the character or nature of impact of Industrial Revolution on India, right? So let's see how UPSC has played with the options. D, heavy duties were imposed on the imports of British manufacturers. Why this is false? Why this will be the impact on India? Why will they impose heavy duties on imports of British manufacturers? है ना? They want to give profit to the British manufacturers. Why will they impose? Right? So D is eliminated. C, railway lines were laid in many parts of the country. Question है, first half of the 19th century. You may get confused. यहीं पर confusion होती है. So when you're actually at the examination hall, you know, you see railways. हाँ, railways तो था, right? But you have to actually link the question with the option. In many parts of the country, many parts में तो नहीं हुआ था first half में. Right? So C is also not defining the character of impact of industrial revolution in India. B, machines were introduced in the Indian textile industry in large numbers. This also did not happen in the first half of the 19th century. Ruining of Indian handicraft industry started. So this is the answer. That's how UPSC, you know, confuses with the option and makes very close option by giving you keywords so that you get confused. Okay? Answer directly can be answered either from Spectrum or this book. Here it's clearly written that according to the early nationalists, a major obstacle to rapid industrial development was the policy of free trade, which was on the one hand ruining India's handicraft industry, and on the other forcing the infant and underdeveloped modern industries into a premature and unequal, hence unfair, disastrous effect. So ruining of Indian handicraft. This can be answerable from your, this can be answered from your Spectrum book as well. Okay? Then comes, yes. Second option of the question, machines were introduced. हाँ. नहीं, ऐसे नहीं होता है कि second half. I am not saying that machines were not introduced, but the question, the statement is saying in large numbers. There is a qualifier which UPSC has, you know, applied in this question. When you are describing the impact, correctly explain the impact of industrial revolution, then this is how what was impacted or which was seen in Indian soil or on Indian soil. Indian soil पे पहले machines से नहीं impact हुआ था. Handicraft industry was the mainstay. They got ruined. What probably you are getting confused is industrial revolution, mechanization. Yes, this is the understanding, simple understanding which everyone has. Industrial revolution से क्या आता है? Machines, growth of machinery, है ना? But that is an overall impact on the world. The question is very typical of India. Impact on India in the first half of the 19th century. India पे जो impact है, that is described by first, you know, we see the ruin or we see the impact by in the handicraft industry. ठीक है? Right? Then comes your questions on British acts or policies. So there have been 5 questions. So that means this topic, every year there is a question. A question from this topic. चाहे वो 1919 Act हो, 1773, 1813, 1833. There has been, will be का तो कुछ नहीं पता. There has been 5 questions every year from this particular topic. ठीक है? Shall I give you the framework first and then shall I proceed? Okay. So, the history of British acts and policies started with the Regulating Act of 1773, right? So the name only suggests Regulating Act, regulations on East India Company operations in India. At that point of time in the British Parliament, you know, many trading companies from Britain went and they said that, you know, East India Company officials have indulged into very corrupt practices, and why are we also not, you know, getting license to trade in India and only East India Company, right? So the talks had begun at that point of time. So the British Parliament then put regulations on how they would do trade in India. ठीक है, तो private trade पे restriction लग गया था. Although, practically this continued, but they regulated the trade activities of the British East India Company. ठीक है, फिर आया हमारा Pitt's India Act 1784. Because this could not realize its ultimate goal, this came. Pitt's India Act, it made two bodies, Board of Control and Court of Directors. Court of Directors, East India Company were represented in it. Board of Control, British Parliament. So जो Indian affairs थे, they were being now managed by Board of Control and Court of Directors together, unlike in 1773 by only East India Company. ठीक है, फिर आया था 1791 में अमेंडिंग एक्ट, 1781 में, सॉरी 1791 अमेंडिंग एक्ट, जिसने इसके पिटफॉल्स को थोड़ा सा it checked upon it. Then came what? Charter Acts. Charter Acts means trade related acts. 1793, 1853, sorry 1831, 33. 1813, 1833, 1853, राइट. चार्टर एक्ट्स के बाद क्या आया हमारा? काउंसिल्स एक्ट. काउंसिल एक्ट मतलब चेंजेस इन दी फंक्शनिंग ऑफ द काउंसिल्स इन ब्रिटिश इंडिया, जैसे इंक्रीजिंग द नंबर ऑफ इंडियंस in the legislature, right? But you don't have to remember how much got increased, but just a fact that, okay, it was increased, right? So number is not important, intent or idea is. So Councils Act of 1861, 1892, ठीक है? So from Councils Act, the journey began in the form of Government of India Act. Now this established representation of Indians in Parliament, and through Government of India Act, the responsibility element was introduced. How? How? Elections, transferred and reserved subjects. Indians could now administer the provinces in different subjects that were transferred to them. So responsibility element, Indians were now also held responsible in the Indian setup. ठीक है, फिर आते हैं हम Independence Act of 1947, right? So that is how you very simply have to understand this topic, right? Within this topic, shall I remove this? Within this topic, specifically there is an year which is very instrumental, that is 1939. 1939 में Congress ministries resigned. Why? Because Indians were not asked their opinion on the participation in World War II. ठीक है, 1940 August offer आया. So what happened after that? Britishers used to give them many, chocolates to Indians, perks. That if you agree to this, we will do this. If you agree with the participation, we will do this. And what was we will do? We will ensure that you will get a constituent assembly, a constitution making body. When we will leave, you will have your new constitution, right? So the story began through August offer, कि हम आपको देंगे Dominion status, a constituent assembly or constitution making body will be there, which will have mainly Indians. A war advisory council will be set up. So all these were, perks offered in August of 1940, but this was not accepted by the Congress. फिर क्या आया हमारा? Cripps mission, right? This was same. हम आपको dominion status देंगे. This got changed. Now this constituent making body will not be having mainly Indians, but only Indians. ठीक है? For some reasons this was also not accepted. फिर आया हमारा cabinet mission, Raja Gopalachari formula. For the Muslim League and Congress cooperation. This did not happen. फिर आया हमारा देसाई लियाकत प्लान. This also failed. Then आया हमारा Wavell plan. This also failed. Then आया हमारा partition plan. Finally an Independence Act. Right? So that is how the British acts and policies were defining the relations of Britishers towards British Indian subcontinent as well as princely states. Princely states के साथ उनका अलग चल रहा था policies and acts, right? Like for example, policy of ring fence, policy of isolation, policy of subordinate union, right? All this is there in your spectrum, so you need not worry. But do them by understanding the whole, image, how things developed. Don't read your books just by remembering the facts or focusing on only remembering the facts. Let's understand that at least you relate with your modern Indian history better than ancient medieval, right? So give thoda sa respect to the subject, and subject will respect you by giving you marks. है ना? So if you'll do your basics, you do it properly, it will also give you a reward in return. ठीक है? So that is how you have to make sense of this topic. Let's see the questions. 2019 prelims, Charter Act 1813. Source is static, very easily. The statements which have been asked by UPSC can be taken from your spectrum or your standard textbook or notes. First, it ended the trade monopoly of the East India Company in India except for trade in tea and trade with China. This is correct. Second, it asserted the sovereignty of the British Crown over the Indian territories held by the company. This is also correct. Third, the revenues of India were now controlled by the British Parliament. क्या आ गया था? Board of Control. 1784 Pitt's India Act. This was already done, right? So 3 gets eliminated when such type of questions were asked, and you could answer it very easily. ठीक है? तो in such questions, usually what UPSC does, UPSC gives you a trap in the form of provision of some other act, right? Or they change the year. That's how they play in the question, right? So you can just read and revise the content for 1784 and 1813. Then comes a question on 2023 prelims on, again, an act-based question, very factual one, but very easy one. By which one of the following acts was the Governor General of Bengal designated as the Governor General of India? 1833 Act. This was considered as the first act of centralization, where the Governor General of Bengal was designated as Governor General of India. And when was Governor of Bengal designated as Governor General of Bengal? (1773). Yes, very good. So 1773 Act made Governor of Bengal as Governor General of Bengal, right? And Governor General of the presidencies of Bombay and Madras were made subordinate to Governor General of Bengal. ठीक है? Good, very good. Then comes question number, question on 1919 Act. So this was asked in 2022. Very easy question, reserved and transferred subjects. So what were reserved subjects? Reserved subjects under 1919 Act happened through diarchy principle. Diarchy was what? Division of subjects into two categories, reserved and transferred. Reserved subjects were those which were exclusively for the Britishers, and transferred for those who were Indians, elected and running the administration. So there were three subjects which were reserved: administration of justice, land revenue, and police. Right? The question is asking on reserved subjects 1, 3, 4. Local self-government was transferred to the Indians. Right? So the answer is 1, 3, and 4. That is C. Right? This act is very important. Government of India Act 1919. There was a question before this also on diarchy. What is diarchy? Okay? Which came, I think, 5 years, before 5 years. Right? How you have to do is, there are certain things which I want to bring to your notice. So certain acts are known by certain terms, right? So if there is a question on August Declaration, August Declaration is not your August offer. August Declaration is not your 8th August 1942 when Quit India Movement resolution was adopted. August Declaration is your Government of India Act 1919, right? So there are certain terms associated which also have to be read, remembered, and understood the way they are. So on 20th August 1917, this Montague Declaration came, and this Montague Declaration was what? That they will now increase the association of Indians, right? This increasing association of Indians was known as August Declaration or Montague Declaration. Okay? Understood? Then comes your question on 1919 and 1935 Act. Again, source is static. You get, answers or facts in your spectrum or your basic standard material. Okay? Question is, so first statement says Montague-Chelmsford reforms on 1919 recommended granting voting rights to all the women. All universal adult franchise was not existing before 47, Anna. So how can this be true? So first is wrong. Second, the Government of India Act of 1935 gave women reserved seats in legislature. This is correct. So answer is 2 only. So this 1935 Act extended the communal representation by providing separate electorates to depressed classes, women, and laborers. Okay? So second only or 2 only is correct. Then comes 2022 Cripps mission question. First statement says the Constituent Assembly would have members nominated by the provincial assemblies as well as the princely states. They were not nominated by the provincial assemblies, partly elected by provincial assemblies and partly nominated by the princely states. So nomination, because of this word, this statement is wrong. So certain words you have to be mindful when you are doing that topic, right? So that means in Cripps mission, the Constituent Assembly would be set up by having partly elected and partly nominated members, right? So 1 is wrong. Second, any province which is not prepared to accept the new constitution would have the right to sign a separate agreement with Britain regarding its future status. This was part of your Cripps proposal. So second only or 2 only is correct. Answer is B. Okay? Then comes your questions on socio-religious movement. The framework to prepare this topic, because again this is important topic. The kind of questions in the last 10, 12 years or 15 years, personality based. Personality based matlab, so for example, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, institutions he set up, organizations associated, reforms undertaken by that personality, right? Second type of questions in this topic is legislation or act based, जैसे चाइल्ड मैरिज एक्ट, सती प्रोहिबिशन एक्ट, है ना? So such type of information you have to do. Third type is Governor General or Viceroys, instrumental in bringing such acts or discrediting the acts, right? So these are the kinds of questions, and obviously the movements. So for example, Hindu reform movements, Muslim reform movements, Parsi reform movements, whether reform or revivalist, it all depends. Okay? So individual questions on reform or revival movement, Governor General or Viceroy is associated with any reform, legislations or act-based question, and personality-based question, their contributions by way of setting institutions, organizations or reforms done. Okay? So this is how this topic is to be dealt. So let's see the questions. Who among the following was associated as secretary with Hindu female school, which later came to be known as Bethune Female School? Answer is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Source is static, your NCRT. Modern India NCRT, old NCRT. It clearly says, Vidyasagar protested against child marriage. All his life he campaigned against polygamy. He was deeply interested in the education of women. As a government inspector of schools, he organized 35 girls' schools, many of which he ran at his own expense. As secretary to the Bethune School, this was what was asked by UPSC. So as a secretary to the Bethune School, he was one of the pioneers of higher education for women. Actually, hota kya hai na? This NCRT is very boring, old NCRT. But the facts which it carries is very good, are very good, right? So you have to make it interesting. You have to emphasize on the word. You have to emphasize ki, personality, his contribution is asked. So in this paragraph, I have got to know that he was a government inspector of school, he was a secretary to Bethune School, and stuff like that. That's how you highlight and revise and understand the importance of fact in NCRTs, which look very boring. Hai? Then comes your question, Rakhma Bai case of 1884. So when this question came, everyone was amazed. Ye kaun sa question hai? Right? They have never come across this question. So, source is static. Is it? Yes. Yahi to problem hai na? That you don't know what are static sources. Which sources? Have you identified the source for every subject? That what all sources will you focus and read a subject from? Please do that. You have to identify it by now, right? And just revise them. So this question basically could come for two reasons back then. One was this book, it's covered, Plasi to Partition. Again, this book, Plasi to Partition, Shekhar Bandyopadhyay. This question could be answered from this book. Second is the dynamic or the current affairs aspect, which you all have to look into whenever you are reading newspaper or you are Googling stuff. So you all use Google, right? In 2017, there was a Google Doodle dedicated to Rakhma Bai. Now, I'm not expecting you to see the Google Doodles, dedicated to personalities in the last 5 years, but I'm just hinting you or providing you the direction that when any historical or cultural personality comes in Google Doodle, you have to prepare that. You don't know whether that personality is being asked by UPSC. Ab aapko note kar, you don't have to keep that in the book. You have to prepare that personality or event, right? Either on your own or from static sources, it's up to you, but you have to prepare. So the source to this particular question, as I told you, was static, so this question was also doable, right? So Rakhmabai case of 1884, again, is stemming, the issue is stemming from socio-religious reforms. So this Rakhmabai, who was Rakhmabai? What was the case all about? हाँ, उनकी शादी जल्दी हो गई थी. She left her husband because she wanted to study, right? But the case is not revolving around women's right to education. Mind you, again, here is where UPSC is making this question complex. So you may have read the story, right? And UPSC has played with you. The question is, Rakhmabai case revolved around which all issues? She left her husband to seek education, but her husband filed the case against her on the issue of age of consent and restitution of conjugal rights. What are conjugal rights? Rights. No, not civil rights. Rights which come automatically within the institution of marriage. Ki there will be harmony, there will be peace, companionship, you will provide for my iPhone, shopping, right? So the rights which come with the institution of marriage from both the husband's end and patni ke bhi dharm hai na towards husband. हाँ, तो rights which are coming as part and parcel of marriage as an institution is what is known as conjugal rights. So this particular case revolved around these two issues. Okay? So Rakhmabai lost the case, right? And she sought a compromise. But this debate or this case brought in, again, another important issue, that was age of consent. So the age of consent was increased from 10 to 12 years, right? Then comes this question, source is unconventional. Unconventional matlab samajhte ho na? Which is not conventional, which is not regular, right? We don't know what the source could be, what could have inspired UPSC paper setter. I could still provide you a far-fetched link why this question could be asked, but I don't want to do that because unnecessary, it would be a kind of a stretching, which I don't want to do. This is unconventional question, right? Vittal Vidvansak, the first monthly journal to have the untouchable people as the target audience, was published by. The options have also been played again by UPSC, right? Usually there is, I'm just sharing with you, usually it is said by the veterans. You know, there are guiding angels that, you know, अगर ये आया ना तो ये मार्कर आना, हमेशा यही क्वेश्चन, यही ऑप्शन ठीक होता है. So there are notions like that, that wherever Mahatma Gandhi is there in the option, answer is that. No, not every time. So this particular question demystifies that notion that wherever Mahatma Gandhi ji is there as an option, that cannot be the answer, right? So this Vittal Vidvansak was written by Gopal Baba Valankar. Now he was an important social reformer. He was a contemporary of Mahatma Jyotiba Phule. He also inspired the untouchability movement in Maharashtra. You have heard about Mahar movement in Maharashtra, right? And the pre-Ambedkar initiatives on untouchability was led by Gopal Baba Valankar. He was one of the very important instrumental personalities who did exemplary work in untouchability in Maharashtra region. Okay? The source, as I said, you have to leave such questions if you have never come across. Okay? Then comes questions on Governor General. There is only one question which was asked in the last 5 years, but they are important. Sometimes in these statement, information on Governor General or Viceroys are asked. But you have to prepare your modern Indian history vis-a-vis your Governor Generals and Viceroy. Okay? Question, Wellesley established the Fort William College at Calcutta because. Very easy question. In your NCRT also the answer is there. There was a question in 2018 also on Lord Wellesley. So again, as I said, that there are themes which are repeated by UPSC. You have to prepare those topics also very nicely. So the question is, Wellesley established the Fort William College at Calcutta because he wanted to train British civilians for administrative purposes. Your old NCRT, I'm not saying that it's not there in Spectrum. In static sources, it's there, right? So Wellesley established the College of Fort William at Calcutta for the education of young recruits to the civil services. That was the most closest answer, option D, that was given by UPSC in the question. Then comes your questions, maximum questions from the freedom struggle and Indian national movement, right? Acha, you want a framework for governor generals as well? Okay, I'll give it to you. So basically, how you have to do governor generals and viceroy? First is, either you can do it with respect to phases. So the first phase is your merchant capitalism, right? So whenever trade establishments, forts, factories, ports were set up, you should know who was the general or company official of East India Company. Then starting from your acts, so 1919 Act के time पे कौन था, let's say 1784 के time पे कौन था. So what the major topics of your history are, you are going to remember the governor generals or viceroy accordingly. Similarly, when you talk about movements, specifically Gandhian movement, so you should clearly remember that at the time of Champaran, who was there, right? At the time of Kheda, who was there? Jallianwala Bagh, CDM, non-cooperation movement, right? Then comes your peasant or tribal rebellions. Famous peasant or tribal rebellions, governor generals and viceroys, specifically with respect to acts like socio-religious acts or socio-religious reforms, governor general or viceroys. I would not suggest you to prepare governor generals or viceroy like this, but what I want is that if you are preparing this, you prepare governor general or viceroy here itself. If you are preparing this, you prepare in this topic. Because otherwise, if you'll prepare governor general or viceroy separately, it will become very factual again. That's how your spectrum is written. At the back of your spectrum, I think there is a table given on governor general. It's very difficult to remember. Again, you can use that table 2 days before the examination. But whenever there is an important event, you prepare and know the governor general there and then, or viceroy there and then. Okay? So, question number 1, or the first question which I will be taking up in Indian national movement and freedom struggle, will be on the topic called Swadeshi movement, because from here we start the journey of national consciousness, right? We understand that we are Indians and we are a nation. है ना? यही था ना first movement, Swadeshi. Understanding of indigenous national consciousness. ठीक है? First statement, it contributed to the revival of the indigenous artisan crafts and industries. Very easy. First statement is correct. Second, the National Council of Education was established as a part of Swadeshi movement. This is also correct. Question is from a static source, whether it's Spectrum or your old NCRT, this question is doable. Answer is C, both 1 and 2, right? But how are you going to prepare Swadeshi movement? So when you are preparing Swadeshi movement, how questions have been asked? One is nature or Swadeshi movement. So that means nature, like you should know that Atma Shakti or self-reliance was an important and integral part of understanding the nature of Swadeshi movement, right? Setting up of indigenous industries is another. This is part of your mains, but it helps you in prelims also, because now statements are coming in the nature of mains type of statements are coming in prelims as well. So it's not as if you will not do this, right? Second is personalities. Who took part in Swadeshi movement, region-wise, right? Their contribution. Third, participants or base of Swadeshi movement. You understand participants? Students participated, women participated, we could see Hindu-Muslim unity, right? So all these aspects is what again you will focus. Then, who did not participate? This is specifically for prelims, right? Governor General, Viceroy, right? Then institutions set up at different places. Outcome of Swadeshi movement. What is the outcome? Very important change in the modern Indian history happened after Swadeshi movement in Congress. Surat split. Very good, very good. This basically happened because of the extension of boycott and Swadeshi movement in areas outside Bengal. Hana? So this members of your membership, nomenclature of members, kinds of members in Congress got divided into moderates and extremists, right? So that's how you have to understand Swadeshi movement. Very, very simply, like a story, and then just fill the dots, right? So this is easy. See, these are the kind of questions which have already been asked. 2016 में पूछा था Swadeshi and boycott were adopted as methods of struggle of the first time during which movement? Partition of Bengal के during. Partition of Bengal made by Lord Curzon in 1905 lasted until. कब तक रहा? King George V abrogated Curzon's Act as a royal darbar in Delhi in 1911, right? So that was the time until Partition of Bengal lasted. ठीक है? So this is the framework: participation, who participated, not participated, personalities, Amar Solar Bangla, you know, the journals written, the newspapers written. I forgot to mention over there in that flowchart. You can add journals or newspaper written, pamphlets written, their names and their authors are also very important part of your Swadeshi movement, right? So that is how you are going to understand this. Outside Bengal activities, who led it, where, press journals, very, very important, right? Then comes your another question on Swadeshi movement. Now this is a dynamic one and based on current affairs, which came in 2023 in the new format. 7th August is declared as a National Handloom Day. Statement 2, it was in 1905 that Swadeshi movement was launched on the same day. So you all know that in 1905 Swadeshi movement was launched. But whether it was launched to commemorate, or National Handloom Day is celebrated on, in 1905, 7th August to commemorate Swadeshi movement is what the question is, right? Now why this is an indication that you have to read newspapers is because of the reason that questions are directly coming from the newspaper. I'm not talking about, current affairs from the view of current affairs, but how you link current affairs with the static one. Every year National Handloom Day is celebrated, right? Why suddenly this year it became a rage? Because there are so many campaigns run on Twitter, Insta, PIB, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, to focus on handicrafts. Our Honorable Prime Minister was coming in different attires to highlight the handicrafts and handlooms. Whenever foreign dignitaries used to come, we used to give our legacy of handicrafts and handlooms to them, right? So that's why when certain things are flashed so frequently in newspaper, on different government platforms or portals, you are expecting a question. Right? Now, question of such a level that it's linking your static with current affairs. है ना? So, there was a article on National Handloom Day in Indian Express, and that is not to say कि अब Indian Express पढ़ना पड़ेगा, but what I mean to say is that this was covered in all the major newspapers, right? It was written that National Handloom Day, observed every year on August 7, the day commemorates the Swadeshi movement that began in 1905 and was first observed in 2015, making it centenary celebration. So 2015, we started celebrating National Handloom Day. That is not to say that current affairs कब का आया है? 7 years back. 15, first National Handloom Day was celebrated. That does not mean that you have to read newspapers for 5-6 years. But this year particularly, 2022, we could see the celebration of handloom or handicrafts in a much more larger scale. Okay? Then comes this question. This is an unconventional question, unconventional source, right? With reference to the book Desher Katha written by Sakharam Ganesh Tioskar during the freedom struggle, consider the following statements. Now, again, there is a catch in this question. Although the question was asked and totally framed from this book, but after when this question came, no, there was a news on Sakharam Ganesh Tioskar in major newspapers after this question. In 2019, so this question came in 2020. In 2019, Sakharam Ganesh Tioskar's 150th birth anniversary was celebrated. But that news of 150 birth anniversary celebrations was not highlighted in 2019 newspaper to that extent that I could tell you that that's how you have to do it. That's why I included an unconventional source and is labeling this question as difficult. After 2020, this personality was covered in the newspapers. I'm just telling you this in a very honest way, just to give you an idea that any personality which is coming or has been asked, you have to prepare it, right? Now, there are two sides of this understanding. One is there is only one question which will be asked, and that's true. Leave. Focus on your static. You are not going to run behind every question of UPSC, Hana? Otherwise, you will become historical. You will publish your notes as books, right? So you don't have to become an information you don't have to become an information collector, you have to become a district collector, right? To become a district collector, you are not gaining information, you are using information what is available to all of you in a more appropriate way and from more, usable sources, which are within your reach, right? So you're not going to run after any source, right, for a question or for one question. Okay? So Sakharam Ganesh Tioskar, as I told you, probably inspired the framer because 2019 was his 150th birth anniversary year. So he's again related to Swadeshi movement. His writings inspired the Swadeshi literature, right? He warned against the colonial state's hypnotic conquest of the mind. What does it mean? He actually, wrote many, write-ups to explain how economically Britishers are exploiting the minds of the people, or exploiting the machinery, as well as through their policies and acts, they are controlling the minds of the people. It inspired the performance of Swadeshi street plays and folk songs. Yes, his journals or writings were existing at that point of time. Third, the use of Desh by Deoskar was in the specific context of the region of Bengal? No. He was talking about nation as a state, India as a nation, and not focusing only on Bengal. That was again a trap set by UPSC test framer, that probably if someone knows that he has certain link with Swadeshi movement, you can mark this statement as wrong, right? So again, if you see the options, if someone knows this, that Desh in Deshar Katha is not restricted to Bengal, one could arrive at the answer. Okay? But nonetheless, this is a not touch me not kind of a question and source. Then comes this question in 2019. The question is very easy and doable from a static source. First statement says, Mahatma Gandhi was instrumental in the abolition of the system of indentured labor. Yes, who was indentured labor? Slaves who were not given salary. They were just meant to do work without any cash or kind, right? Bandhua Mazdoor or Begari system is what you know as indentured labor. Second, in Lord Chelmsford war conference, Mahatma Gandhi did not support the resolution on recruiting Indians for World War. Actually, he supported the resolution on recruiting Indians in the First World War, right? This is First World War. So Lord Chelmsford, 1919, है ना? तो उस time पे what was the position of Mahatma Gandhi on First World War? You do that in mains also. What is the opinion of Mahatma Gandhi in the participation in First World War? He wanted to participate, है ना? तो in Lord Chelmsford's war conference, Mahatma Gandhi did not support the resolution on recruiting Indians for World War. This is wrong. Third, consequent upon the breaking of salt law by Indian people, the Indian National Congress was declared illegal by the colonial rulers. This is true. Again, all the statements which are there are easily found in your spectrum or any other static source. So the answer is 1 and 3 only, right? जैसे ये एक write-up है from your NCERT, I suppose, was declared illegal, right? Then comes your next question. 8th August 1942, again a very easy one from your static source. With reference to 8th August 1942 in Indian history, which one of the following statements is correct? 8th August 1942, Quit India Resolution was adopted. ठीक है? अगर August Declaration होगा तो Montague Declaration. ठीक है? So this was an easy question. Old NCERT में दिया हुआ है. All India Congress Committee met at Bombay on 8th August 1942. It passed the famous Quit India resolution. So doable from your static source. This question does not look like coming from static source. Yes or no? Does your static source includes current affairs and newspaper? That means you are not doing your newspapers on daily basis. What is static source? What is static source? Static means what? Textbook. So you don't consider your newspapers as textbook? Newspaper is newspaper. Newspaper is your daily ritual which you have to do for UPSC. Right? Yes, it's included in the current affairs, but it is inevitable. Inevitable का मतलब समझते हो? Without which you cannot clear. Right? Without reading newspaper and preparing current affairs, it's very difficult now to clear UPSC. ठीक है? Who among the following is associated with songs from prison, a translation of ancient Indian religious lyrics in English? Again, the option. So I showed you one question where M.K. Gandhi ji was one of the wrong option, and one question where he is the answer, right? So don't go by those trends now. Trending होता है ना कुछ, वो trends पे मत जाना. UPSC is fooling and debunking all those trends now. It has started its own trend of eliminating the elimination, right? So don't have any trends, go by your information. Songs from Prison, a translation of ancient Indian religious lyrics in English, was done by Mahatma Mohanchand Karamchand Gandhi. And this is basically from your newspaper, right? Wrongly it has been written static source. So it's from your newspaper. This jail, Yerawada jail, was highlighted in 2021, right, because of the tourism initiative which the Maharashtra government was starting. And when, when you get such news, specifically explained, write up in your Indian Express, you have to do it from other aspects also. So in that newspaper article, there was mention that in Yerawada jail, Mahatma Gandhi wrote songs in prison. Okay? Another question which is from your static source, very easy one, personality-based questions. Shah Nawaz Khan, Prem Kumar Sehgal, Gurbaksh Singh Dhillon are remembered as. They are officers of Indian National Army. Directly, these names were given in your old NCRT. If you could see, Shah Nawaz, Dhillon, Prem Sehgal. All three names were written in one line, and probably from this page itself, the paper setter has framed the question. So that's why this is one of the important books which you have to do. Again, that is not to say that you don't find this in Spectrum, but what I mean to say is that one reading to banta hai, right? Then comes another personality-based question. Freedom fighters, Barindra Kumar Ghosh, Jogesh Chandra Chatterjee, Raj Bihari Bose, who were actively associated with Gadar Party. Now, all these names, are given by UPSC again to confuse you. They are all revolutionaries, right? It may so look that all three are, members, or at least two of them are members of Gadar Party. So when you get such questions, either you know it or you don't know them, because it's factual question. If it is not giving you scope for elimination, leave these questions. Again, because you will lose out on 2 marks, right? Or because of the negative marking. Most of you will attempt this question, but those who might have not attempted this question would get a benefit. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Most of you will get this question wrong, right, because of the options. But some might mark Ghosh or Chatterjee also because of the time period which UPSC has played with. They are all revolutionaries of that time period only. But who is associated with Gadar Party is what the question is. Okay? So the answer is 3 only, Raj Bihari Bose. There was also a question asked in 2015 on Gadar Party. So on Gadar Party 2015 there was a question, and then 2022. Again, themes do get repeated. So when you're preparing Gadar Party, let's say, or Gadar movement, right? So prepare it accordingly. Personalities, events, reasons, right? Outcome.
So can we expect that sometimes next time a question can be framed from these 3 options, like anything related?
Yes. I will be coming to this also after I end the discussion of the questions. The personalities or the information which you get through questions also is a source of information which you have to prepare in the future. The options do get repeated. The information on these personalities or events, whichever comes in a particular question, do become a source of question next year or next year's forthcoming years, right? So you have to prepare them, right? Okay, then comes this question. Doesn't look like static one, but it is. With reference to Mandan Palle of Andhra Pradesh, which one of the following statements is correct? Now again, what UPSC is doing, that they are focusing on significant historical places. You just had yesterday your geography session. There, Gitika ma'am must have told you about significant places and geography. There was a question, if I am not wrong, on cultural places like Hampi, Tiruchirappalli, and rivers probably, right? So you do get question on cultural historical places and their significance. Either you get in the form of geography, or you also get typically in the form of history, that what is the importance of Mandanpalle. So this trend is what one can now predict, that this can become a new trend of asking question. Historical, cultural, important places. Before 2010 or 2013, there were questions on these lines. I'm talking about last 20 years before 2013 and 10, there were questions specifically on the importance of places, right? Now this is continuing again. Whether you see in IR mein they are asking on places and their importance and reason why they were in news. In geography they are asking, in history they are asking. In economics you do get question on mineral sources or places in news, right? Either you link it with economic geography or you consider it geography or economics, that's up to you. But the point is, importance of places is what UPSC is again asking. So this Mandanpalle in Andhra Pradesh was a place where Rabindranath Tagore translated Jan Gan Man national anthem from Bengali to English. From where do you get it? You get it in your 6th class ka NCERT. Where? This box, down below. Jan Gan Man was translated by Rabindranath Tagore from Bengali to English in February 1919 at Mandanpalle in the district of Chittoor. Why I am showing this? Because when I will be taking up art and culture, questions are coming from boxes and images and map. This is not to laugh, but this is indication, clear indication, which I am from my own hard work, I am sharing it with you. That there are boxes in your NCERT, there are things which you have to look, which will save you, right? So if you are doing NCERT, so when toppers say they have revised NCERT 20 times, 10 times, they are not leaving even a single piece of information. Then that means they have done it, right? Every piece of information, whether it is in the box, in a cartoon, in a table, in a map, they have done it, right? And that's how they bring precision in their preparation. Okay? Then comes your factual questions like these. Easy ones, you get such information again in Spectrum or your standard textbooks. All India Untouchability League, Mahatma Gandhi. All India Kisan Sabha, Swami Sahajanand Saraswati. Self-respect movement, Ramaswamy Naikar. Very easy ones, very important. These organizations and movements, again, is a hint that you have to prepare them, right? Every topic which UPSC gives you as a right or a wrong option, or an option to check, that means they are important, whether it's wrong or not. Okay? So these names, these movements are important. Answer is D, 1, 2, and 3. On the similar lines in 2019 itself, there was again a question like these. This personality and position held. Tej Bahadur Sapru has been a president of All India Liberal Federation. K.C. Niyogi, he was a member of Constituent Assembly. P.C. Joshi, he had been a general secretary to Communist Party of India. Again, important personalities, important positions and organizations or parties, right? Answer is 1, 2, and 3, right? Again, from your static source. There was one question which UPSC dropped. There is again, how many of you have seen UPSC answer keys? Nowadays, UPSC is dropping the question, right? Either because of factual error, which now UPSC is also doing, It's not only the test series questions which has errors, UPSC questions also has errors. So UPSC dropped this question. We will not discuss this, but the topic is important because we don't know the answer to this question. Hana? However, the topic is very easy and very important when Gandhi-Irwin Pact. Invitation to Congress to participate in the RTC is correct, right? Probably UPSC was not sure with respect to second option. Because it says withdrawal of ordinances promulgated in connection with the civil disobedience movement. You do get in your spectrum or your standard textbooks that ordinances were withdrawn, after Gandhi-Irwin Pact, right? But of which nature? That there's no clearly mention in any book. So probably because of this, UPSC dropped this. Otherwise, third is correct, acceptance of Gandhiji's suggestion for inquiry. No, oh, sorry, this was not accepted. So Gandhiji suggested inquiry into police excesses. Fourth, release of only those prisoners who were not charged with violence. This is correct. This was part of your Gandhi-Irwin Pact. So the point is that this topic is important, but UPSC has not come out with the answer to this particular question. Okay? And mind you, if UPSC is giving you answer to the questions, those answers or statements are to be remembered as they are, irrespective of whether you find any opposite content in any source. You should not put a question mark, कि भाई NCERT में तो ये दिया है, but UPSC is not accepting this. Let it be. Whatever answer UPSC is giving of that particular fact, you have to remember it. So if UPSC says that there was no evidence of horse in Indus Valley civilization, there is no evidence. Whether you find it being written कि हाँ सर कोडा में horse remains थे, लोथल में थे, whatever. But UPSC said there was no evidence, so there is no evidence. Right? So whatever UPSC says is a patthar ki lakeel, right? Words written in stone. You have to believe them. Then come one question on peasant or tribal rebellion. So to do and prepare this topic, because this is important, I'll just give you a framework. So when you are doing peasant or tribal rebellions, you have to prepare first the region, reason, important leaders, participants. It was against which class of people. So sometimes peasant movements are against the zamindars, sometimes peasant movements are against the Britishers. So you should know that against whom the peasant or tribal rebellions were there. Then any act or legislation which came as part of reconciliation or outcome of peasant or tribal rebellion, जैसे कोई committee was set up, any board was set up, right? Then comes your press or journal or book. So sometimes peasant revolts, are highlighted, their cause is highlighted in certain books, just the Deenbandhu Mitra. So he wrote, journals and books on peasant movement. So if any press or journal or book is written, right? Next aspect is tools or methods or strategies. So some peasant movement had guerrilla warfare as tactics. Some peasant movement or tribal rebellion had, social boycott or legal recourse taken. So you should know that which strategy or method they used to, highlight their problems, right? So this is how you will prepare peasant or tribal movements. Okay? So what was the question? Question was very easy. Ulgulan or the Great Tumult is description of which of the following events? It was Birsa Munda's revolt of 1899-1900. It was given in your India's struggle for independence. It's given in your spectrum also, in almost all your static textbooks. Sol Gulan of the Munda tribesmen is what is being talked about in the question. So you can just go through it. Again, the same framework I have given you. So you should know the uprisings, the reasons, personalities involved, it was against whom, right? The outcome of the movement, all of that is what you have to prepare. Then there is only one question left on this modern Indian history analysis, one question of miscellaneous type. So this question came in 2023 prelims. Very unlikely of UPSC to ask such kind of questions which looks like as if we are giving an optional paper in prelims. Hana? Are we expected to remember the personalities who have been archaeologists? Again, the idea is go with the source and not the type of question. Source, you all know that you have to read NCERT. Okay. So the question is, Alexander Ree, A.H. Longhurst, Robert Sewell, James Burgess and Walter Elliot were associated with. So there is a mention of Walter Elliot in your NCERT. Walter Elliot, he had been a commissioner of Guntur and he excavated marbles. On his name, Elliot marbles were, named. So he was an archaeologist, right? So if you have done NCERT, this is new NCERT, Themes in Indian History Part 2, Part 1, 600 BC, Ancient Indian History ki hai, right? The content you get in Ancient Indian History, but the personalities and the time period in which they have worked pertains to Modern Indian History. That's why I classified this question in Modern Indian History section, right? Because they are all archaeologists, archaeological excavations with which they were associated. Okay? So if you have done NCERT or standard source, you can very well attempt this question. So that means you have to choose and identify your sources as soon as possible. Okay? To make sure that you are in a good position, right? So that is the first takeaway I would recommend to you, that you have to identify the sources. Sources I have told you of this particular subject. Others you can take help of the sessions whichever you are attending, right? The faculties will let you know the sources. So you have to do them. The dynamic aspect is what you will cover from your newspapers or current affairs magazine. Second thing is link your static with current affairs. Static sources, once it's done, second level of preparation is current affairs with the static. Previous year papers, they are actually your Bible. When you are short of practicing or content, you look and go through previous year papers and find out the content which you don't know, the topics which you don't know, the information which you don't know, and build your base accordingly. If I may add to this list of key takeaways, I don't know whether it will be too much for you or not, but there are other papers also which UPSC conducts, CAPF, CDS, right? In those papers, history and polity questions are very useful. I have seen many linkages of topics asked which may look new to you. They have already been asked there in those papers, and they have been asked in UPSC Civil Services Prelims paper. This is only for those who are very scared of prelims, right? Otherwise, if you go by the analysis, static sources plus newspapers is more than sufficient, right? Next thing is, if you still don't want to do CAPF and CDS, you can, which you will be anyways, you have to rely on test series, you have to practice test series, so you have to align your preparation with test series. One, to check whether you have revised and read and understood what is written in NCERT. Second, if there are other books which you have not touched, right? You will get information in the test series through different topics. So your test series also helps you to enlarge your base of preparing new topics which are not found in your regular static textbooks. Explanations also become a source of information, right? So that was all for today. If you still have any questions, you can ask me.
Ma'am, completely, how much NCRTs? How much NCRTs?
How many NCRTs?
6 to 12, then is preference.
6 to 12th. See, this question is very important. So my idea to show you, source of every question was not to confuse you that from this NCRT also questions come, this NCRT also question come. The idea was that you pick one source. Let's say if you have picked spectrum, right? So spectrum is having lots of facts, right? But there are facts which are unique in NCRTs. It's not as if Swadeshi movement will become different on what you read from spectrum to what you read in NCRT. But there are certain one or two facts which you read in NCRT which you can just write it in your spectrum book if that is your main source, right? So NCRT reading should not take too much of time. Just first cover your spectrum, right? And see, what all facts which are not there in your spectrum are found in NCRT and just add to it. If you're asking me this, yes, all NCRTs are important. Questions are being asked, इसलिए तो दिखाया ना. Why will I do such hard work for you? Yes. Right.
So, for preparing for mains, what would you suggest the material?
See, I'll just repeat his question for those who are watching it online. So his question is that through questions, what we can understand is that there are many sources from which questions have been asked, or the themes which have been asked can be linked with your mains topics. So yes, right? There are parallels, there are linkages to mains topics asked in prelims and vice versa. It's not as if prelims is not an indication for your mains questions in modern Indian history. Just to give you an example, there was a question on Krishnadev Raya's contribution in literature, right? So it's not as if Krishnadev Raya has not been asked or literature has not been asked, right? What I want to give you a message is that you all start your preparation from mains perspective. Continue that, right? Second thing which I told you was that what you read for exclusively prelims is again a base for your mains answers. Like for example, facts which you will substantiate in your mains answer, right? Third, what he's asking is that can I give the sources for mains? This was for prelims, and are there any sources exclusively for mains? The answer is no. What should be the source of mains is there has already been a mains analysis done, 1 month back. Go for first the syllabus. Syllabus wise you prepare mains. You don't go book wise. You go book wise for prelims. Are you understanding? So if in mains there is a topic written, let's say issues or questions on women reform, something like that, right? Or contributions of different personalities. So you have to prepare, you don't find contributions of different personalities from different parts of the region in a book. There is not a chapter like that, right? Unlike in special books like Placitu Partition where there is a chapter like that. But you don't get. There has been a question on contribution of foreigners in mains, right? So you don't get a chapter in your static sources on those lines. So in mains, the direction for you still remains from the static sources which we have discussed, whether it's Placido partition, whether it's, you know, your NCRT, whether it's your spectrum. So there are aspirants, there are toppers who have only read spectrum and they could still write mains answers because they have prepared the syllabus. So there is not a single book list for mains. Book list remains the same, right? You will refer to Placido partition. You will refer to NCRT. You will refer to spectrum. Now, to which intensity you have to read. Now, again, just to give you an example, that peasant movement, what you understand in NCRT vis-a-vis your Placido partition will be a bit different, because there the book is not written from prelims perspective solely. If you compare it with spectrum, so spectrum is purely prelims perspective, right? In mains, let's say Placido partition, you have different story, you have ideas, you have themes running in the book. So you take the cues from that book, right? If UPSC is not using that book, then there would not have been a single question from Placido partition. That means Placido partition is used in mains and prelims both. That is also very important. The books which I have shown you, even a single question which has come from that book is important. It all depends on the answerability. Again, I'm emphasizing the purpose was not to confuse you that there are so many books which you have to refer. The purpose is that you make one book as a prime source and add facts which are not found in that book. That's it. Okay? The story will not change much. Non-cooperation movement will not change. Only a new insight will be given. That could be, you can get it from your test series questions also, whether it's mains or prelims, right? So it all depends how you use the source. Okay? Any other question? So all the best, guys. Have a nice day. It's important to give your best every day. You know, work upon your preparation, work upon your skills, and that's about it, right? All the best.